The sky over Okinawa was black with smoke, and the air reeked of gunpowder and burnt earth. It was April 1945, the final, brutal stages of World War II. The island had turned into a graveyard of men, backhand index pointing down, and metal. American troops had landed weeks earlier, facing relentless Japanese resistance. Every hill, every cave, every patch of jungle had become a battlefield. Among the chaos, there was a group of American soldiers, exhausted, mud-covered, and haunted by the screams echoing through the valley. Sergeant Thomas Hayes, a man in his late 20s, led his small platoon through the ruins of a once peaceful Okinawan village. The mission was simple: clear the area and secure the route for advancing tanks. But as they moved through the shattered wooden houses, something unexpected happened. From the darkness of a half-destroyed hut came the faint sound of crying. Everyone froze. Private Miller, the youngest of them, raised his rifle, ready for an ambush. "Sir, could be a trap," he whispered. Hayes hesitated, scanning the room. Then he lowered his weapon. "Hold fire," he said firmly. He slowly stepped toward the sound, pushing aside a broken door. What he saw stopped him cold. A young Japanese woman, clutching two small children, trembling with fear. Their faces were streaked with ash, their eyes wide with terror. For a few seconds, no one moved. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. They had been told again and again that Japanese civilians could be dangerous, that some carried grenades, that others pretended to surrender only to strike back. But looking at the woman's trembling hands and the frightened children hiding behind her, Hayes knew this was no enemy. These were innocent lives caught in the fire of war. "Ma'am, we're not going to hurt you," he said softly, lowering his weapon completely. The woman didn't understand English, but she sensed his tone. She whispered something to her children, pulling them closer. Hayes signaled his men to put their guns down. "Miller, get some water from the canteen." Backhand index pointing down. The platoon was now deep inside enemy territory, and stopping was dangerous. Artillery shells could fall at any time. Yet Hayes made a decision that would change their lives forever. He ordered his men to secure the area and tend to the civilians. One of the children was bleeding from a leg wound. Another was too weak to walk. The soldiers, trained for destruction, now found themselves acting as protectors. As night fell, the sound of distant gunfire grew louder. The platoon took shelter inside the ruins with the civilians. The Japanese woman kept her children close, occasionally glancing at the soldiers with a mixture of fear and gratitude. Hayes sat by the doorway, listening to the thunder of war in the distance. "We'll get them out by dawn," he told his men, "no matter what it takes." The next morning, the unit began moving toward the American lines. The civilians walked in the center, guarded by the soldiers on all sides. The jungle was alive with danger: snipers, landmines, and patrols. Twice they had to dive into the dirt as bullets whizzed overhead. Every minute felt like an hour. At one point, they stumbled upon a group of wounded Japanese soldiers hiding in a trench. Tension filled the air. The Americans aimed their rifles, ready to fire, but the wounded men didn't reach for their weapons. They were too weak, too broken. Hayes ordered his men to stand down again. "No one dies today," he said. He left them food and bandages before moving on. Hours later, rain began to pour, soaking their uniforms and washing away the blood and dirt. The woman struggled to carry her children through the mud. Without hesitation, Private Miller lifted the smaller one into his arms. The child clung to him tightly, too young to understand who was friend or foe. For the first time since the war began, Miller smiled. "It's okay, kid. You're safe," he whispered. By nightfall, they reached a steep ridge overlooking the beach where American ships were anchored. But between them and safety was an open field, fully exposed to enemy fire. They couldn't wait until morning. Hayes knew they had to cross now. He gathered his men and explained the plan. They would run in groups, using smoke grenades for cover. "Keep the woman and kids low. We'll draw the fire." When the smoke went up, chaos erupted. Gunshots cracked through the air. The soldiers sprinted, shouting and firing back to distract the enemy. Hayes ran beside the woman. pushing her forward as bullets tore through the grass. One hit Miller in the shoulder, spinning him around, but he kept moving. Another soldier fell, but the rest didn't stop. Their mission was no longer victory. It was survival and mercy. Finally, they reached the edge of the field. A squad of American Marines spotted them and rushed to help. The woman collapsed in tears, clutching her children. Hayes knelt beside her, his heart pounding, his uniform soaked in blood and rain. The rescue was complete, but at a heavy cost. 2 of his men didn't make it. When the war ended months later, Hayes received a letter. It was written in broken English, signed by the same woman he had saved. She thanked him for risking everything to protect strangers, people who had once been called the enemy. She told him her children had survived and were growing up in peace. Back-end index pointing down the letter ended with one line that Hayes never forgot. You fought not against Japan, but against hate. Years later, when he was old and gray, Hayes often sat on his porch, watching the sunset. Sometimes, he would take out that letter, unfold its faded paper, and read it again. He never thought of himself as a hero. He had seen too much death to believe in glory. But in that one moment, on that terrible island, he had remembered what war tries to make men forget, that every life, even the life of an enemy, is worth saving. And so, the story of Sergeant Thomas Hayes and his platoon lived on, not in medals or history books, but in the hearts of those who survived because a few soldiers chose compassion over hatred. In the ruins of war, they had built a small bridge of humanity, and that perhaps was their greatest victory.
Hi friends, how are you? Please one like, one comment, one subscribe. Please, I am poor man. Please give me. Please, I am poor man.